I'm Curtis Woloschuk, Director of Programming at the Vancouver International Film Festival. In today's episode, we'll be joined by Yuqi Kang, Director of 7 Beats Per Minute. 7 Beats Per Minute takes us into the world of freediving, a space in the depths that few of us have ever ventured to. Welcome to the VIFF Podcast. This is your chance to get the inside track from the people behind the films you love and the films you are yet to discover. This podcast was recorded on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh Nations. Recorded during the 43rd edition of the Vancouver International Film Festival, these conversations take us behind the scenes with the creators bringing their work to the big screen. Today we'll be discussing 7 Beats Per Minute. While attempting a world record freedive in the Bahamas in 2018, Jessea Lu lost consciousness and stopped breathing for 4 minutes, forcing her to confront parts of her life and past she had long buried. Years later, Jessea returns to the site of her near-death experience, ready to dive again and become reborn. An amateur freediver herself, filmmaker Yuqi Kang gives us the sublime images of the ocean depths and fascinating insights on the nature of the sport, the compulsions and trauma that drive Jessea. We're very pleased to welcome Yuqi Kang to the podcast. Welcome, Yuqi.
Thank you for having me.
There's some things in my life that I can kind of wrap my head around. Like we had a guest previously. We were talking about food. That makes perfect sense to me. Kind of extreme sports, be it like long distance desert running, in this case freediving, are just compulsions that I don't naturally relate to. And I was wondering for yourself, as we just said, you're an amateur freediver yourself, and wondering what kind of drew you to this world, maybe as a participant initially, and then for it to become the subject of a film.
I think maybe 15 years ago, I saw a YouTube clip of a freediver without any oxygen tank, just drifting in an ocean current for 3 minutes altogether. That visual really stunned me. And that time I had this urge just wanting to experience what it's like as that person in that image. So later I became a documentary filmmaker and with opportunity present, I'm developing my second documentaries. I know it's a career that's I have to put a lot of my time and passion in there. So I thought I'm gonna pursue a project in freediving. So I went to a place to train freediving myself and get a grip understanding of the communities and understanding their handful world champion athletes and what kind of freedivers lifestyles are, and that's how I started this project.
And then how were you drawn to the subject of the film? I know she's like a very prominent figure in the freediving communities. Maybe how did she emerge onto like your radar? And then what were maybe some of your first communications to her about wanting to make this film together?
Mhm. Definitely, once I learned freediving and learned about the well-known freedivers from around the world, I had a list of people I want to interview. So I just started to contact them one by one. Jessea is by far at that time the most well-known freedivers in China, and I just contacted her through her social media, and she replied me very quickly. That time I was in Beijing and she was in Shanghai, so she said she's open to meet. I just took the overnight train to see her the next day, and many years later, Jessea told me the reason that she decided to let me film her live is the initial where she said she's in Shanghai, and the next day I met her in the city, took a train. For me, that was a no-brainer. I want to meet her in person and to understand who she is. But she said that that's a sign that she really felt. Of course, we met, we clicked, we're around the same age, and many other things. But that's the first sign she realized I'm really serious, and that's why she decided to come on as the subject of my film.
Did it was it reliant upon meeting her, or do you think you could have made a film with another freediver, or were you looking for that right person who, the two of you could kind of complement each other in terms of their pursuit and your desires as a filmmaker?
Definitely, I think that's the reason. I met a lot of people prior to her, but it's a process of chemistry, read, even like just for me to feel that kind of like just a instinct this is the right person. And when I met Jessea, just her life story and how she is as a person, something just clicked in me. And we talked that night for like 8 hours or something until all the stores closed. And I present this question: would you let me to go to your house with my crew to film, to film you? And she definitely said yes. And I feel that's I can't say what's the exact reason, but it's definitely an instinct that I've not felt with other people that I met in this freediving.
You or it strikes me that there must be a different set of responsibilities as a filmmaker, or maybe it's maybe a weight that sits on you when you're also capturing images of someone who is partaking in an exercise that is very dangerous. And sure, Jessea did stop breathing for 4 minutes previous on a previous dive. What How did you maybe prepare yourself kind of emotionally and mentally as a director, just knowing that you're watching and capturing someone who is doing something very, very perilous?
I think from the get-go, I know this is what they chose to pursue, and there's passion and spiritual journeys that each individual of us are going through. But in case of this film, I also train in safety diving to pair with the athletes. So I've seen a lot of incidents like this. And in those times, what we can do best is to stay calm and assess the situation and provide the aid that we need to bring them back to life. So when I know this is Jesse's pursuit, all I can do is best to support her emotionally and spiritually to go through this journey.
You mentioned the element of the spiritual there as well, and maybe at first glance this might seem a departure from your previous feature, A Little Wisdom. But I was wondering if you saw parallels between like kind of that monastic life and the meditative qualities of it. And I think there is a meditative quality to the very title of the film. The having 7 heartbeats in a minute. It just changes time and changes kind of reality as well.
Definitely, I think the each each subject and theme, even like the leading character in the film, I very carefully chose. In my first film, I'm very curious with religion and with what religion does to people. That's why I traveled to Nepal, and throughout that process, I screened over 40 monasteries and filmed with many, many monks until I find the right monk that I feel I could tell a story. And but there's a personal interest for me to choose, religion and freediving as a subject matter. And what drew to me freediving, it's also about the ideas of ocean and all life originated from the sea. I think in a way I'm trying to really understanding like the grand scheme of what does it mean to be alive.
It's a worthy pursuit, and please share your answers if you get them.
Okay.
That would be greatly appreciated. Um, it and you had also mentioned at the very beginning that there was this 3 minute clip that you saw of free diving, and obviously you were captivated or seduced, if you will, by those images or drawn in by them. I had the chance to see this film for the first time at Hot Docs when it screened there on a very sizable screen, and it is. I'm trying to think of like a non-pun way to say it, but like it's such an immersive piece with the underwater cinematography elements like this, from a technical standpoint, be it the underwater photography, other considerations. Can you just talk through maybe some of those challenges that were there, or was it those challenges that excited you about the project as well?
um I don't think the challenge excites me. When I when I learned freediving through and through, I actually felt I'm very confident to capture those images under the waters and do things. But really, like once the camera start rolling, we do like location scoutings. But like it always happens on the day when we go out shooting, the weather wasn't same as the day we went out scouting. There will be storms or rain, anything like the different lighting affects how the image look. It and the salt water with camera, it's just a very terrible combination. So in the end it really become a process of letting go of my creator's egos. This is what I plan, what I want to shoot versus what nature's offered to us, and what we can do the best.
I think that's really interesting because I think a lot of people do go in with, as you said, be it ego or a sense of control or a very defined idea of what this will look like on the other end of it. Um, how was that a realization that occurred to you very early on that you had to kind of remove all those expectations of even a semblance of control in that space, or did it take a while for you to come to terms with that?
I think I slowly realizing I have to let go of expectation, just like filming with nature elements, and also like a Jesse's life course took a different path from what we originally envisioned, and just keep following her footsteps. It was a slow revelation for me. I would say only until the film finished, I fully grasped how much that has took change in me, and like how much beneficial as a creator to learn those things.
Do you feel that's something you'll take forward in your work?
Definitely, this is something I feel I can definitely take in my future projects.
Um, I can only imagine also like that. We are talking about people, an individual who's looking to set a record in terms of the free dive, and you, from a technical standpoint, you kind of need to get that moment. There's maybe no second takes as well. How did yourself and your crew kind of ensure, if not like safety in the parameters of freediving, but safety in terms of filmmaking, that if that moment was going to be achieved, that you would be able to ensure that you were capturing it on film?
I think that's the thing with documentary. We can prepare the best we could, but we can never predict what's gonna happen in the future for somebody's life. We hoped Jessie would break the record she set for herself, but there's no way to guarantee that will be the result. But what we did is we go out with her every day, and we understand I will always be in the water, and I know all the procedures around the platforms, and my team got used to utilize a small kayak to be as close as possible. And there's the field producer in the water yanking the kayaks. So we just kind of become a very utilized little team, and always there waiting for the moment to be captured.
Did you were there films you drew upon for kind of like visual reference, or any sort of consultation you did around underwater photography in preparation for this that was really essential to the making of it?
Not to film specifically, but we did had the pleasure work with all like very renowned freediving underwater cinematographers, and I had a chance to see where they have like filmed in the same location and what kind of result they have achieved, and it it looks like a very dangerous, and you would imagine there were a lot of people behind to get those footage, but actually just one person with a freediving suit and a camera and an underwater case. And usually they would I would tell them this is kind of the image I'm imagining I've seen for a slate of work, but I also need it to be continuously. So see, this is the shot, it's a shot, and they hold their breath and dive down and film it for me, bring it up, show me in there, and then they dive it again, just like that. We filmed the most underwater footage like that.
Did you mentioned that in the nature of documentary filmmaking is that you don't know how this will the destination that you arrive at. But are you a filmmaker who thinks about the edit as you're shooting over time? Are you thinking about how that film can be structured, or how much of that do you leave for the editing space?
I think in that way, even I work in documentary space predominantly. I'm very structured in that. In my first film, we shot 28 days in total, and every scene we shot, we edited in the film. And this one, it's constantly it we shot over in 6 years of 7 beats. So there were a lot of moments I was just sitting with Jesse and filming a moment that never end up in the film. So that process was very different from what I naturally am as a filmmaker. But we did even when I decided to make a film about Jesse, I had a full on treatment from the beginning, middle to the end. I would say like the film in terms of structurally stayed that way.
Yet, you mentioned in there that you have predominantly worked as a documentary filmmaker, but recently you went through the Canadian Film Centre program as well, looking at more narrative work. It, for where your trajectory goes from here, do you see yourself balancing documentary work and narrative work, or is this a bit of a new chapter that's being written for yourself as a filmmaker now?
I think I the format of cinema in like storytelling is what I'm interested in. It's not like a either documentary or fiction. When I worked on on fiction project, what I really enjoy is the sense of freedom. Um, Not working with a real person, there's a sense of creative freedom in terms of how the story can expand in that I really enjoy. But I still really enjoy the format of documentary. It's not like when the camera rolling, we have to perform in a short span of times. You really can, shoot filming or figure out an idea for a long period of times. And the crew size are relatively small. For my first film, we had a crew of four, and this film sometimes it's only myself, and sometimes it's like three other people. We travel together, we live in one Airbnb together. There's much more space just as collaborators to exchange ideas and grow a room to breathe. In terms of fiction, when the camera start rolling, you really just have no time but perform. So in both of the aspect, I really both enjoy. I still would do documentaries in my futures.
You well, you had mentioned as well that in a previous documentary interviewing 40 monks to understand to identify the person that would be ideal for the film, and in this case, the search for the ideal freediver that you found in Jesse. Um, have you had to kind of abandon projects in the past because you weren't able to find the individual who aligned with the idea? And if so, how difficult a process was that to kind of let go of something?
Yes, I think in like 10 years, I went to Inner Mongolia Reserve each time for altogether for 2 months to find a story to tell because I'm ethnically Mongolian. I really wanted to go back to the origin where my family come from and find a story to tell. But each two times I visited a lot of families in the reserve. What I've learned is no matter my heritage root comes from, right now I'm just an outsider viewing like any other, community's life. It doesn't make a difference that my cultural root is from we're Mongolians, and that's where I decided to abandon that project. Even we shot a lot of stuff, um, I just feel like I'm not in the right state to completely understand where it came from, and in that way, I decided to move on to the freediving project.
And you've relatively recently relocated to Vancouver as well. Um, are you someone who's inspired by the spaces that you inhabit? Like, do you find the ideas that come to you as a storyteller, do they shift based upon where you're living at a given point in time? And if so, has like Vancouver maybe changed your thinking about future projects?
I think moving to Vancouver is purely um, I decided to relocate back to Canada, and just for the weather reason, I really want something warm. But once I just packed my bag and moved to Vancouver, I really just grow in love with the city because it's so small. The core center of Vancouver is very accessible for me by bicycle, by public transportations, and the weather and the small cultural hub and very um, there's like many different cultures that mashed in the city center. Um, I think in the long run, I would more and more grow into the city and understand what that impact to me as a filmmaker.
Have you I started this by saying as well that this is a world that I couldn't really envision beforehand, and it feels like there's maybe um, an appeal to a type of film like this as well, where you get to capture a world that is almost unimaginable for many people. And I wonder, as you've shown it to audiences, do you find that people's eyes are kind of just opened up to this underwater reality that they couldn't have envisioned beforehand?
Um, for our screenings, I think like not just like the underwater natures of freedivings and how like people viewing this humanly impossible act. For instance, Jessie holds her breath for more than 10 minutes, those things. But like to look at her, but be able to emotionally relate to her story and seeing the audience go up to Jessie and give her a hug and seeing how she comes alive with sharing her traumas and finding something healing through this like sharings was something more I imagined, like took me by surprise almost at when we showed the film together to the audiences.
Well, in guaranteeing that we have no control over how this interview ends, I'm going to reach into this popcorn box of random questions and see what arises for you.
Okay.
Yeah, deep intake of breath. Let's see
Okay.
what we have here. Which film quote do you use way too often in real life? Is there a line from a film that's just really resonated with you?
I mean, I'm not like a big film person. I watch like I watch a lot of movie in that sense, but I always like use that one. Actually, no, it's very depressing. So I really like don't use a lot of film code, and I think like I because English is not my first language too, so I just realized like it's like really hard for me to even memorize a lot of lines for movies. So I don't like if I talk to with other filmmakers, exchange like their just filmography. Sometimes I couldn't even recall the titles of films that I really liked.
Is there a moment from cinema that comes back to you then? Like maybe not a line of dialogue, but
Mhm.
just like maybe something in your that arises in your subconscious every once in a while, like something that was really indelible for you at a formative age.
Um, well, in my formative age, I really enjoy watching horror films and scary movies. But I think like when I first started to notice the arts of storytelling, like I remember I watched this movie called Water Lily, and there was this young teenage girl. She went into the trash of somebody, like from she dug into the trash of someone and started to eat a half-eaten peach or an apple, I think. And that made me really relate to that character on a real sense. I always remember that moment. And that's when I noticed female storytellers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm certain that there are moments within 7 beats per minute that will sit with Vancouver audiences for a long time as well. Thank you so much, Yuqi, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have been listening to the VIFF Podcast. Thanks to our community broadcast partner, TELUS Story Hive, for their support. If you're enjoying the show, please rate and review this podcast and be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Visit VIFF.org to learn more about the Vancouver International Film Festival and see what's on at the VIFF Center year-round.